Ever wondered what happens when a powerful alien lord gifts his own daughter, who can't walk, to a hardened mercenary, thinking it will be a cruel joke? In this thrilling sci-fi adventure, that very joke triggers an epic struggle for freedom and respect. You'll witness daring escapes through asteroid fields, secret alliances with underground scientists, and a shocking medical procedure that might restore the princess's mobility, and perhaps more. Welcome to a universe where impossible odds fuel astonishing triumphs. Stay with us until the end to see how this story of betrayal, ambition, and unexpected devotion wraps up. You won't want to miss the twists and the hopeful new beginning that await these unlikely allies. If you enjoy stories packed with action, heart, and a touch of wonder, subscribe to the channel now. Your support helps us bring more exciting adventures like this to life, and we'd love for you to be part of our growing community of story lovers. A thin haze of shimmering waves curled under the high arched ceilings in Archduke Krelwyn's citadel, its lights tinted an unsettling shade of purple. A lone figure stood in the center of the grand audience chamber, waiting with barely contained impatience. That figure was Rowan Cade, a human mercenary with a reputation for tenacity forged by years of battling pirates, corporate enforcers, and the occasional rogue warlord. His black and gray tactical armor bore fresh scorch marks and pitted metal plates, all mementos of the latest job he had completed on behalf of his so-called employer. Despite the stench of ozone, the haze of the overhead gas lamps, and the constant hum of energy projectors, Rowan's entire focus was directed at the dais where Krelwyn lounged upon a crystalline throne. The Archduke's skin shone emerald, each scale reflecting the purple glow in scintillating patterns. He was not purely reptilian, though. There were distinctly mammalian traits woven into his physiology, an effect of his species' ancient gene crafting. His eyes, a bright liquid silver, carried a cruel intelligence that set Rowan's nerves on edge. While Rowan normally prided himself on being unflappable, he sensed that the Archduke's amusement hid something darker, some game that made a mockery of the mercenary's time and effort. Around the throne, Krelwyn's elite guard hovered with rifles that looked more ceremonial than practical, though Rowan had learned long ago that appearances could be dangerously deceptive. "I've upheld my end of our bargain," Rowan said, voice cool but threaded with frustration. The job had been more intense than he'd anticipated, clearing out a horde of ravagers, merciless raiders who seldom surrendered and boasted unholy alliances with black market labs, had forced Rowan to expend a good portion of his munitions and nearly cost him a few limbs. "Your ravager problem has been handled. You promised me payment." Archduke Krelwyn lifted one brow ridge, the silver in his eyes flickering with malicious delight. "Payment?" he echoed, letting the word linger. "Ah, yes, we did discuss credits, didn't we? I recall a certain agreement for repairs to your ship and a tidy sum of currency." Rowan ground his teeth. "I need that money now. My vessel's reactor is on its last legs, and the repairs don't come cheap. If you're trying to renege on our deal, I won't hesitate to—" The Archduke let out a laugh that clattered like broken glass. "Threats, Rowan Cade? You know I keep my word, but sometimes the universe offers treasures far beyond the petty measure of credits." He gestured languidly. Two guards disappeared behind an ornate set of double doors etched with swirling alien script, returning moments later with an object that made Rowan's voice catch in his throat. It was a cart, meticulously carved from lacquered wood and pushed by two heavily armored soldiers. Upon it lay a slender figure, a woman with flawless skin the color of pale jade, her hair so black it seemed to absorb the purple glow around her. Her garments were decorative, bejeweled at the collar and waist, a cross between a formal gown and a display piece. More striking than her loveliness, however, was the intense fire burning behind her eyes that landed on Rowan with a defiance that challenged even her father's presence. "Rowan Cade," Krelwyn said with theatrical relish, "I present to you my daughter, Nira. She's been, shall we say, of limited use to me since a tragic accident robbed her of mobility below the waist. Consider this your payment." Rowan stared at the Archduke, disbelief warring with disgust. The notion that a father, no matter how ruthless, would offer up his own child as a form of currency was revolting. Yet Krelwyn looked supremely pleased with himself, his grin bearing razor-edged teeth that flashed in the purple light. Rowan's hand drifted toward the sidearm holstered at his thigh, the desire to punish Crowin for this indignity surging through him. But he let the impulse fade, reminding himself that a direct challenge to the Archduke's guards in the heart of this citadel would be tantamount to suicide. The emerald-hued daughter, Nira, was already scanning Rowan with calculating eyes. Despite her clear paralysis, her legs unmoving, half-draped in that elaborate gown, there was nothing helpless in her expression. She held herself with aristocratic poise, her chin raised. As the guards maneuvered the cart forward, each jostle caused her mouth to tighten with pain or anger, but she never once uttered a complaint or cry of distress. "I don't deal in slaves," Rowan said evenly, forcing his voice to remain neutral even though revulsion churned inside him. "Or trophies. This wasn't part of our arrangement, Archduke. Our contract was for credits." Crowin snapped his fingers, and the guards lifted Nira by the shoulders, transferring her onto a hover stretcher that hissed softly as it compensated for her weight. Though her body was limp from the waist down, her arms were toned, suggesting she'd built significant strength through necessity. "Yes, yes," the Archduke said with a dismissive air, "but credits are mundane in these lean times. My dear Nira is worth far more, if you know what to do with her. Of course, if you're dissatisfied, we can always end the arrangement right here and now, but I doubt you'd leave without something to make this costly venture worthwhile." Rowan's lips curled into a snarl, but he knew Crowin had him cornered. The moment Rowan tried to protest further, the Archduke's soldiers would force him out of the citadel, and the payout he desperately needed would vanish. Slung with debt from maintaining his ship, the Eclipse runner, and with no easy way off-world other than braving this citadel's guards, Rowan realized his leverage was next to non-existent. So he turned his glare on Nira, half expecting her to shrink under the scrutiny. Instead, he found her gaze unwavering. There was fury in her eyes, yes, and a trace of humiliation, but also a flicker of keen intelligence. Something about that look hinted that she had her own plans, and that she was nobody's pawn. "Fine," he relented at last. "I'll take your payment." He spat the word, hoping his disgust would resonate. "But understand me, Crowin, this isn't over. Not by a long shot." "My dear human mercenary," the Archduke cooed, gesturing for the guards to deliver Nira to Rowan's custody. "I'm counting on it not being over. Now take your prize and be on your way. My hospitality only stretches so far." With a bitter laugh, Rowan motioned for the guards to follow him through the citadel's corridors toward the main hangar. Hover lights flickered against the polished floors, their low hum mingling with the distant rumble of starship engines. The entire time, Nira remained silent, her spine rigid as steel, her expression guarded. Only once they were out of earshot of her father's court did she finally speak. "You think I'm going to be some fragile bauble for you to barter away?" she asked, voice tight with anger. "Think again." Rowan's eyebrows shot up at the vehemence in her voice. He had half expected tears or resigned acceptance, given how Crowin had dismissed her as damaged property. But clearly, Nira was no one's victim. The corridor leading to the Eclipse runner stretched out before them, the lights overhead an unflattering bright white that revealed every scuff and burn mark on the mercenary's battered armor. The guards behind them barely concealed their smirks, evidently enjoying how Rowan would be saddled with what they viewed as the Archduke's useless daughter. "I don't know what your father's game is," Rowan said quietly, aware that they might still be under surveillance. "But I'm not keen on crossing him in his own palace. Let's get out of here first. We'll figure the rest out later." Nira's eyes narrowed. "You're worried he'll come after you for refusing, or that I'll slow you down, crippled as I am?" "Neither," Rowan replied, guiding the hover stretcher around a sharp turn. "I'm worried that I'll end up with a bullet or plasma bolt in my back if I try anything in front of these clowns." He tilted his head toward the pair of guards, who were too far behind to catch every word but close enough to intimidate. "As for you slowing me down, let's just say I've worked with worse handicaps than a pair of unresponsive legs." She gave a bitter laugh. "Handicap? Another euphemism for worthless, I suppose." Rowan stopped short and turned, forcing the guards to nearly collide with the hovering stretcher. He glared at them until they backed off, then looked at Nira. "Listen," he said quietly, "I don't know you, but I know what it's like to be underestimated. Where I'm from, I was always the upstart who didn't come from a privileged academy or a fancy lineage. Believe it or not, I've built a career on exploiting the fact that people expect less from me. Nira's gaze flickered, and for a moment her rigid posture relaxed a fraction, spoken like a man who might actually understand. They continued in silence for a time, until they emerged onto the hangar floor. The Eclipse runner, Rowan's aging but resilient starship, rested at a far docking pad. Its hull bore scrapes of burnt metal from the Ravager battles, and the starboard wing was patched with mismatched plating, but the main thrusters still hummed in idle mode. "Welcome to my home," Rowan said, punching in security codes at the loading ramp. The guards maneuvered Nira's hover stretcher up the ramp, depositing her unceremoniously in the cargo bay. One soldier made a half-hearted attempt at mock politeness. "Good luck with your new possession, Merc." His tone dripped condescension. "Hope she's worth the trouble you're in." Rowan barked a laugh, waving them away. "Why don't you stick that hope where your Archduke can admire it?" he retorted, activating the ramp closure behind them. The guards left with irritated expressions, and the hatch sealed, cutting off the purple glow of the citadel. A pressurized hiss confirmed the bay was now secure. Nira let out a slow exhale, gathering the folds of her gown around her. Then, with surprising agility, she pushed herself upright, bracing against the side rail of the stretcher. Rowan could almost feel the defiance radiating off her. "So," she said, "now that we're away from my father's minions, want to tell me how you really plan to use me?" Rowan studied her for a moment, trying to parse the conflicting feelings coursing through him. Disgust at Crowin's cruelty, curiosity about Nira herself, and a fierce desire to maintain his autonomy in a deal that had gone all wrong. "I'm not planning to use you," he said. "As far as I'm concerned, this arrangement was forced on me, but you might be safer with me than if you stayed with your father. That man obviously has no qualms about discarding you." Nira's jaw tightened. "He's been trying to get rid of me for a while, throwing me into sham negotiations with alien barons, arranging accidents in the Citadel's corridors. I can't prove it outright, but I'm certain he orchestrated the event that cost me my mobility." Her tone was so matter-of-fact that Rowan felt a surge of pity. He squashed it quickly, aware she would likely hate being pitied. "Why, yeah," he asked, "what could possibly make a father resent his own daughter so much?" She gave a humorless chuckle. "The Archduke is obsessed with appearances. A paralyzed heir tarnishes his image. He wants someone physically perfect to carry on the family line, not someone who's damaged goods." Her green eyes glittered with anger. "And if you believe the rumors, there's another reason. He thinks my condition is an omen that his bloodline is weakening, and he'd rather I just disappear so he can produce an heir with someone else." Rowan let out a slow breath. "I've seen some rotten excuses for fathers, but that might take the top spot. So you need a way to survive." A faint smile tugged at her lips. "And you need a way to get your ship fixed. I suspect I can help you there. You have no idea who my father is entangled with, or what secrets I overheard growing up in that citadel." "You're telling me you have intel on Krelwyn's illicit dealings?" Nira shrugged, a gesture made graceful by her naturally regal bearing. "He's neck-deep in black market, arms trades, covert alliances, you name it. I can point you to certain banks, hidden vaults, deposit accounts. You could extort enough from them to cover your starship repairs and more." Rowan crossed his arms, studying her. "And in return?" "I want freedom," she said simply. "I want to walk again, if that's even possible. I've heard rumors of advanced biotech that could restore mobility using neural interface systems. The cost is staggering, and the labs that have it are heavily guarded. But with enough credits and the right connections, you and I could get our hands on that technology." He nodded slowly. "So we make a deal. You give me the info, I get the credits we need, we track down this experimental tech, and we see if it can help you walk." Nira inclined her head in agreement. "Precisely, but we have to move fast. The moment my father realizes I'm not being sold off in some distant corner of the galaxy, he'll send people after us. He hates loose ends." Rowan guided Nira from the cargo hold into a modestly sized living area, where he set up a makeshift seat cushion and some straps to keep her steady during flight. We've got one immediate problem, Boso, he said, opening a panel on the nearby bulkhead. Inside was a flickering display showing the ship's reactor status. The Eclipse runner is hanging on by a thread. We'll need a stopover somewhere neutral to make minimal repairs. Otherwise, we won't get far. Nira arched an eyebrow. There's a place called Tarnak Station, about a day's journey from here if we push the engines. It's a free port of sorts, a black market haven that doesn't ask questions. I could arrange for us to hide out there while you get your ship patched up. And Krellwin's influence doesn't extend that far. I can't guarantee he doesn't have contacts there, but it's certainly less likely than most places. Tarnak Station survives on letting questionable characters do business. My father's more about illusions of legitimacy, so he rarely uses that hub. Rowan grinned. Then Tarnak it is. We'll set off as soon as I finish pre-flight checks. He knelt to double-check a series of cables connected to a battered diagnostic machine. As he worked, he felt Nira's gaze on him. Why did you take that job from my father anyway? She asked, adjusting her position so she could lean against the side of the seat. You had to have heard the rumors. Krellwin isn't known for fair dealing. Rowan let out a short, humorless laugh. When you're a mercenary, you weigh every job by risk and reward. He was offering enough credits to solve several big problems. I knew it was risky, but I needed the money. Seems I was right about the risk and wrong about the reward. And now you're stuck with his broken daughter. Glancing up, he saw the bitterness in her eyes. You're not stuck with me either, he said quietly. If at any point you decide you'd rather part ways, I won't stop you. But from what you've told me, our goals align. Nira pressed her lips together, nodding. Deal, at least until we get what we both want. Then, we'll see. Without further conversation, Rowan completed his checks. Soon, the old thrusters of the Eclipse runner rumbled to life, vibrating through the deck plates. He moved to the cockpit, and Nira pulled herself forward using her arms, refusing his help. Even with limited mobility, she maneuvered with a dignity that made Rowan want to punch Krellwin for treating her as worthless. From the pilot's chair, Rowan ran through final systems checks, ignoring the pang of annoyance that the reactor still sat at 62% integrity, prone to meltdown if pushed too hard. Beside him, Nira buckled into the co-pilot's seat, her hands deftly navigating the secondary controls. This was someone used to starships, he realized, a far cry from the helpless daughter her father had portrayed. With a final command, the engines roared, and the Eclipse runner lifted off. Next stop, Rowan said, his voice vibrating with the thrusters. Tarnak Station and a better future, hopefully. Space stretched out before them in a vast tapestry of glittering stars. Behind them, the imposing silhouette of Krellwin's citadel receded, the purplish glow of its atmosphere, now just a distant haze. Rowan input the coordinates for Tarnak Station, calculating a route that would minimize detection. He knew all too well that Krellwin's information network was extensive, and if the Archduke discovered their destination, he might dispatch bounty hunters or mercenaries who owed him favors. Nira leaned back in her seat, and for the first time since he had met her, she exhaled in something akin to relief. I don't think I realized how badly I wanted to escape that place, she said softly. When I was younger, I dreamt of forging my own path, but everything changed after the accident. Krellwin withdrew us all his affection and started parading me around as a bargaining chip. I felt imprisoned. Rowan cast a sideways glance at her. You're free now, though, more or less. She let out a short laugh. Freedom is expensive, you know that. We still have to worry about who might be on our tail and how to acquire enough credits to chase down that experimental biotech. But at least I'm out of that citadel. Her gaze turned resolute. I'm not going back, no matter the cost. A series of beeps from the console alerted Rowan to an incoming transmission. He swore under his breath. That signal's encrypted, he muttered, toggling the display. Could be someone from your father's retinue. Nira's eyes widened, but she composed herself quickly. Patch it through. If it's a threat, we'll deal with it. The screen flickered, revealing a severe-faced woman with slate-gray skin and a metallic port running from her temple to her jawline. Greetings, Eclipse Runner, she said, voice dripping with polite menace. This is Regent Halvisa of the Sovereign Blade. My sources tell me you have left Archduke Krellwin's domain carrying valuable cargo. Rowan exchanged a wary look with Nira. We're not interested in conversation. What do you want? Halvisa's thin lips curved. Krelwyn might not pay you in credits, but I will. Bring me the Archduke's daughter. Intact or otherwise, my interest is her knowledge. A flicker of anger flashed across Nira's face, and Rowan's own frustration mounted. We're not for sale, he snapped. Find your pawn somewhere else. Very well, Halvisa replied, narrowing her eyes. You should know you're making a costly mistake. I represent certain powers that would reward you handsomely for compliance. I'll give you a short window to reconsider. After that, well, she let the threat dangle. We have ways of retrieving what we want. Good day. The transmission cut off, leaving Rowan and Nira in a tense silence. I might have miscalculated how quickly other factions would come sniffing around, Nira muttered, rubbing at her temples. It seems my father's not the only one who sees me as a commodity. Halvisa's mention of knowledge. She must suspect I've got data on Krelwyn's deals. Then we better move fast, Rowan said, locking in the jump calculations. Tarnak Station might be our best shot to lay low and figure out our next move. Hopefully, we'll stay a step ahead of any bounty hunters. The journey to Tarnak Station proved more harrowing than either anticipated. Even traveling along lesser-known routes, the Eclipse runner picked up signs of pursuit. Unidentified vessels appearing on long-range sensors, then vanishing, only to reappear closer on a different vector. Rowan suspected these were Halvisa's scouts, or maybe some other opportunists who smelled profit in capturing Nira. The battered reactor, meanwhile, ran at dangerously high temperatures whenever Rowan had to push the sublight engines to evade. During moments of respite between frantic course adjustments, Rowan found himself drawn to Nira's presence. Initially, he had seen her simply as the unlucky victim of her father's schemes, but she proved to be a capable co-pilot and a quick thinker. More than once, she pinpointed a hidden route through asteroid clusters or used partial debris fields to mask their energy signature. He also noticed that her arms, though slender, had honed strength, allowing her to manipulate the controls rapidly, compensating for the lack of leg mobility. They fell into an odd rhythm of collaboration, exchanging ideas on evasion tactics, speculating on the value of Krelwyn's secret data, and strategizing how best to acquire the biotech she sought. At times, their conversation lapsed into comfortable silence, broken only by the beep of instrumentation or the hum of the air recyclers. Rowan, who had always prided himself on his solitary independence, found himself surprisingly comfortable with Nira by his side. Eventually, the distant lights of Tarnak Station came into view. Suspended in the void, the station looked like a metal sphere half embedded in an ancient asteroid, tethered by massive docking clamps. Pulses of neon advertisement ran across its surface in alien scripts, proclaiming the availability of every vice known across the sector: gambling, exotic mercenary recruitment, illicit biotech, and more. The docking beacons flashed an erratic sequence of red and blue, indicating clearance codes were required for entry. Nira typed a lengthy string of digits into the comm console. This might still be good, she said, assuming my father's lackeys haven't invalidated it. A burst of static, then a curt voice responded. Code recognized. Proceed to docking bay 2. Keep your nose clean, or we'll clean it for you. Rowan laughed under his breath. Friendly bunch. As they maneuvered into bay 2, the station's scanners enveloped the Eclipse runner in a web of flickering lines. Just routine scanning, Nira explained. They're checking for contraband that competes with the local black market bigwigs. But anything else goes. Moments later, the ship settled onto a rusted landing platform ringed by blinking hazard lights. A hiss of pressurized air signaled their successful docking. Rowan killed the engines, then turned to Nira. We made it. Now the question is, how do we stay alive and under the radar long enough to handle repairs and line up a meeting for that biotech? Nira's lips curved into a wry smile. Welcome to Tarnak Station, Rowan. Keep your wits about you and watch your back. Around here, trouble finds you faster than you can blink. She placed a hand on the hover stretcher's side, ready to disembark. Together, they stood at the threshold of a world where each step would be fraught with hidden dangers and unforeseen potential. Tarnak Station's interior was a riot of noise, color, and the pungent scent of questionable substances. As Rowan and Nira moved through the central thoroughfare, a corridor lined with stalls selling black market wares. They drew a mix of curious and predatory glances. Overhead, neon signs in half a dozen languages flickered, advertising everything from organic nanostem enhancers to lost limb regeneration, no questions asked. The station's denizens ranged from heavily augmented cyborgs to swindlers hawking stolen artifacts. Rowan's instincts, honed by years of precarious dealings, kicked into high gear. He kept one hand near his sidearm at all times. Despite Nira's limited mobility, she insisted on navigating the walkway under her own power, maneuvering her hover stretcher with agile arm movements. Whatever vulnerability she might possess in some eyes, her composure radiated enough confidence to make a few would-be troublemakers hesitate. "The biotech we're after," Rowan said, keeping his voice low. "Do you have a lead on exactly who might have it?" Nira nodded, her gaze flickering across the endless parade of shady characters. "I know of a facility that once did advanced neural interface research, but that lab is rumored to be defunct after it was raided by a group of rogue scientists. The name Dr. Vieira Lenz came up in my father's private files, someone who specialized in bridging nerve damage with artificially grown connectors. If we can find her, we might have a shot at truly restoring my legs." "So Dr. Lenz was never captured?" "As far as I know, no. She vanished. But if anyone on Tarnak Station can give us a clue to her whereabouts, it's Jareth Quinn. He's a broker with contacts in everything from pharmaceuticals to xenogenetics. Of course, he'll demand a price." Rowan snorted. "Figures. Nothing comes free in a place like this." They rounded a corner, stepping aside to let a group of brash-looking bounty hunters pass. As they did, one of the hunters paused, eyes flicking over Rowan's battered armor and Nira's elegant but practical traveling garb. Rowan tensed, hand drifting closer to his weapon. But the hunter merely sneered and continued on. "You see," Nira said quietly, "predators everywhere." Eventually they reached a dimly lit alcove that seemed carved out of the station's superstructure. A rusty metal sign overhead read, "The Ventricle," swaying precariously from loose bolts. The place reeked of stale liquor and burned electronics. A single bouncer, a hulking reptilian alien with mechanical arms, stood at the entrance, scanning patrons for concealed weapons. Though Rowan suspected the bouncer didn't care so long as the appropriate bribes were paid. Stepping inside, they were greeted by a cacophony of overlapping music tracks, a swirl of neon, and the thick haze of narcotic vapor. Huddled in a far corner, separated from the rowdy patrons by a half-broken glass barrier, was a table where two guards loomed over a slender figure in a velvet coat. Jareth Quinn, if the rumors were correct. Rowan inclined his head toward the corner. "That's our man. Ready?" Nira blew out a breath. "As I'll ever be. Let's go see if Quinn can lead us to Lenz, and if we have enough bargaining chips to make him talk." Navigating the crowded bar took deliberate effort. Nira deftly maneuvered her hover stretcher, weaving between intoxicated patrons whose flailing limbs nearly collided with her more than once. Rowan, for his part, kept one hand on the center of her backrest, partly to steady her and partly to broadcast a subtle message. "She's under my protection." For better or worse, it was a signal that occasionally deterred trouble in lawless environments. Jareth Quinn looked up as they approached, his pale violet eyes and sharply angled face giving him an almost vampiric appearance. Metallic studs lined his ears, and a single strip of neon blue hair fell across his forehead. His two bodyguards were muscular humans in matching black leathers, each armed with a short energy blade at the hip. "Rowan Cade," Quinn said in a languid tone, as though recalling a half-forgotten acquaintance. "I've heard the name whispered around the station. And you've brought a companion. Intriguing." Nira lifted her chin. "I'm the companion with the questions and credits to pay for answers, unless the rumors about your information network are exaggerated." Quinn flicked his gaze over her, noting her immobility, but also the regal pride in her posture. He smiled thinly. "Someone who knows what she wants. I approve. But keep in mind, my information doesn't come cheap. Many have tried to haggle with me, and few succeed." Rowan cleared his throat, leaning over the table. "We're looking for Dr. Vieira Lenz, formerly associated with a neurobiotech lab that shut down after a raid. We have reason to believe she's still operating in secret, perhaps in the Outer Rim territories. You help us locate her, we compensate you." Quinn tapped a lacquered fingernail on the tabletop, pretending to consider. Vira Lens. Yes, I've heard the name. A genius, some say, in bridging organic and synthetic nerve tissue. Rumors claim she can restore lost mobility, or even enhance neural pathways beyond their natural limits. No wonder you're interested. He paused, his violet gaze lingering on Nira's legs, though I suspect your reasons are highly personal. Before Nira could retort, one of the bodyguards stepped forward, expression impassive. We'll require an upfront payment for that kind of lead, Quinn. These are tough times. Quinn nodded. Indeed, let's say 50,000 credits for the preliminary data on her last known whereabouts. Another 100 if you want a direct introduction. Rowan stiffened. They were nowhere near that kind of money, certainly not on hand. They needed the hush funds from Krelwyn's hidden accounts or another source. Nira, however, did not flinch. She merely smiled, the expression as cold as any aristocrat's. 50,000, she said calmly, will get you the location of certain off-grid vaults my father uses to launder his wealth. Send a retrieval team, and you'll have more than enough to line your pockets. But you only get that intel if you put us on Lens's trail. The moment the words were out, Rowan felt a rush of mixed relief and anxiety. She'd just offered Quinn a massive tip-off that could shift the balance of fortunes in this sector, assuming it was valid. Quinn's eyes lit with greed, and a slow grin curved across his lips. Ah, he said, the legendary hidden assets of Archduke Krelwyn. You have my attention. The negotiation that followed was a tense dance of insinuations and feigned indifference. Quinn, sensing the immense value of Nira's intel, tried to push for more, specifically a direct handover of all account details before he provided any lead on Dr. Lenz. Nira, however, expertly countered, offering a slice of the data up front, just enough to verify its authenticity, then promising the rest upon receipt of verifiable intel on Lenz's location. Watching her work the negotiation, Rowan was impressed. She might have been physically constrained by her paralysis, but intellectually she was a powerhouse. Her tone was steely, her arguments honed, and she never allowed Quinn to steer the conversation beyond what she was willing to concede. At one point, Quinn tried to bully her by bringing up rumors of Crowin's cruelty, but Nira simply gave him a dispassionate smile. I was there, she told him, through every shady deal and every double cross. I know the entire labyrinth of my father's finances. Trust me, the morsel I've shared is just the beginning. You want the full feast? You'll give us Dr. Lenz. Eventually, Quinn relented. I can't say I have the exact coordinates for Lenz's lab, he admitted, but I have a contact who might. Word is she's hiding in an asteroid belt in the Outer Rim, experimenting in secrecy. The contact's name is Lord Bastion, a formidable figure in biotech black markets. Win his favor, and maybe he'll point you directly to her. But be warned, Bastion isn't the trusting sort. He deals in leveraged secrets. Rowan exhaled, feeling both relief and apprehension. Lord Bastion was a name that carried ominous weight in the underworld. If Krelwyn was the cunning aristocrat type, Bastion was the shadowy kingpin who thrived in illicit research. All right, we'll talk to Bastion. He paused, glancing at Quinn's bodyguards. And you'll keep your part of the bargain. You won't leak our presence or intentions. We have enough enemies sniffing around already. Quinn spread his hands in a theatrical flourish. Discretion is part of the service. Just be careful. Bastion's network spans across multiple star systems. If he decides you're more valuable as captives than as partners, he won't hesitate to betray you. Nira nodded. We'll keep that in mind. She tapped a small datapad she'd brought, transferring a carefully edited file to Quinn as a token of good faith. In exchange, he handed her a chip containing Bastion's last known location and contact protocols. They sealed the deal with curt nods. As Rowan helped Nira pivot her hover stretcher around, Quinn said quietly, One last warning, Lady Nira. The data you hold could topple your father's empire. That kind of power doesn't go unnoticed. You'll be making enemies wherever you go. She paused, glancing back with a solemn expression. I've lived with powerful enemies my whole life. This time I'm choosing them, and choosing what to do with the secrets I carry. Leaving the ventricle, Rowan and Nira retraced their path through Tarnak Station's labyrinth of corridors. Yet the throng seemed more hostile than before, or perhaps their newly acquired knowledge made them hyper-aware of danger. Every hiss of hydraulics made Rowan tense. Every suspicious glance quickened his pulse. Back at the docking bay, they were greeted by a jarring sight. A small group of armed figures stood near the Eclipse runner's ramp. At first glance, Rowan feared Krellwin's or Halvisa's forces had tracked them down. But as they approached, the silhouettes coalesced into something more surprising. One figure stepped forward, a tall woman whose right arm appeared entirely mechanical. The plating of her artificial limb gleamed in the docking bay's overhead lights, and her face, scarred but resolute, indicated a life of struggle. Behind her, a pair of individuals in mismatched gear hovered nervously, weapons half raised. "You Rowan Cade?" the woman asked, voice echoing slightly through a damaged voice synthesizer. "Depends who's asking," Rowan replied, one hand inching toward his pistol. She lifted her mechanical arm in a gesture of peace. "Name's Ayan. I heard rumors a human merc and a green-skinned aristocrat from Krellwin's line were on Tarnak. Word on the station is, you might be the new owners of some very sensitive data that could shake up the sector." Nira's gaze hardened. "And you want that data, I assume?" Ayan gave a short laugh. "I'm not here to rob you. I'm here to offer an alliance. My people, let's just call us the Horizon Collective, have been on the receiving end of Krellwin's prejudices for years. He tested weapons on fringe worlds where our families lived. We lost friends, loved ones, entire communities. We want justice, but we've never had a way to prove the Archduke's involvement." Rowan's brow furrowed. "And you think we can give you that proof?" "If half the rumors about what Krellwin's daughter knows are true," Aeon said, "then yes, we could finally reveal how far his corruption runs. We'd be willing to protect you in exchange for that information." Nira exchanged a look with Rowan. The possibility of a protective alliance sounded tempting, yet they were already juggling multiple objectives, like locating Dr. Lenz. "We appreciate the offer," Nira said diplomatically, "but we can't promise anything. Not yet." Ayan's expression softened. "We understand. Information is currency. Just know that if you find yourselves outmatched by your father's minions, or others who want that data, the Horizon Collective stands ready to assist. We're not mercenaries. We're people whose lives were upended by his cruelty." Rowan tapped a finger on the hover stretcher's console, weighing the pros and cons of forging an alliance. "We're heading out soon after we do a quick reactor patch-up. You have a comm frequency?" Ion slid over a small transmitter. "Encrypted channel. Contact us if you change your mind, or if you need backup." With that, she and her companions retreated, leaving Rowan and Nira alone in front of the Eclipse runner. The docking bay's ambient hum felt oppressively loud now, each echo reverberating in the metallic chamber. Rowan guided Nira up the ramp, sealing the hatch behind them. "Looks like we're not the only ones who want to see Krellwin's empire crumble," Rowan remarked. Nira smoothed a hand over her hover stretcher. "Good. I'm not looking for an army, but it's nice to know we're not entirely alone." Before departing Fernac Station, Rowan undertook urgent repairs on the Eclipse runner's failing reactor. The docking bay provided access to spare parts, though the cost nearly drained the last of his legitimate funds. With Nira's assistance, he rerouted power through secondary conduits to ease the strain on the main core. While they worked, half a dozen technicians lingered, offering overpriced aid or eyeing the ship's cargo hold with naked curiosity. But Rowan and Nira remained guarded, allowing no one beyond the engine compartments. Hours later, the reactor's readouts finally hovered at a stable 80% capacity, enough to make the next jump without risking a meltdown. Rowan wiped sweat from his brow and sank into a battered chair in the engine room. Nira hovered beside him, her expression tinged with relief. "Glad that's done," she said. "The last thing we need is an exploding reactor when we head to the outer rim." Rowan nodded. "We'll need more permanent repairs eventually, but this should get us to Bastion. Once we have Dr. Lenz's location, we can figure out how to secure the biotech. Then, who knows? Maybe we come back here, link up with that Horizon Collective, and start hitting Krellwin's empire where it hurts." Nira studied him quietly. The overhead lights cast harsh shadows across her features, emphasizing her sharp cheekbones. "You've changed since that day in the Citadel," she observed. "When Krellwin first handed me off, you were all about personal gain. It was just about the realm. Now you're talking about toppling an empire." Rowan shrugged, though he couldn't entirely deny her words. Maybe seeing how disposable he made you feel got under my skin. Or maybe I'm just tired of scumbags like Krelwyn and Halvisa pulling the strings. A gentle silence settled between them. Then, in a soft tone, Nira asked, "What happens if I do manage to walk again? If Dr. Lenz's technology works?" He hesitated, not certain how to answer. "That's for you to decide, isn't it?" Nira's eyes gleamed. "My father always told me that even if I got my legs back, I'd never rule effectively, that I lacked the ruthlessness to command power. But maybe," her voice quavered, then steadied, "maybe I want to prove him wrong. Not by being cruel, but by creating something better." Rowan rose from the chair, stepping closer so that he stood beside her hover stretcher. "I'd say you already have enough grit to command respect. Anyone who's watched you negotiate with Jareth Quinn would agree. Walking or not, you've got leadership written all over you." The corners of Nira's mouth quirked up in a brief, genuine smile. "You know, Rowan, you say the right things at the strangest times." He laughed quietly. "Don't get used to it. I'm still a rough-around-the-edges merc." She raised a hand, tentatively resting it on his forearm. "Thank you, anyway." They locked eyes for a second that felt like an eternity, until an urgent beep from the ship's console broke the moment. Nira pulled back. "A comm signal?" "Probably Quinn," Rowan muttered, heading to check the cockpit readouts. "Or someone else wanting a piece of us." As he flicked the switch, Lord Bastion's crest appeared on the screen, a stylized serpent coiled around a cluster of mechanical gears. "That's Bastion's insignia," Nira whispered, tension evident in her voice. "Looks like he's making first contact." Lord Bastion's voice radiated an unsettling calm as it crackled through the cockpit speakers. "Rowan Cade, Nira Krelwyn, I understand you've been seeking me regarding a certain Dr. Viera Lenz." The message was pre-recorded rather than a live comm, which meant direct questions would have to wait. "Meet me at the coordinates provided. We'll discuss terms. Bring all your cunning. If we're to do business, I expect competence. Bastion out." Rowan exchanged a look with Nira. "At least he's direct." Nira nodded, tapping the new coordinates into the nav system. "And it seems he knows exactly who we are. No point hiding." Indeed, the message left them little choice. If they wanted to find Dr. Lenz, they needed Bastion. Within an hour, the Eclipse runner departed Tarnak Station, slicing through the star-flecked darkness. The journey would take them several days, with at least 2 jump gates to traverse. That gave Rowan and Nira ample time to strategize, and to worry about what ambush might await them. On the second day out, tension coiled in Rowan's muscles like an overwound spring. He spent hours in the cockpit or the cargo bay, tinkering with weapon systems, making sure everything was ready for a potential firefight. Meanwhile, Nira combed through stolen data files from her father's archives, gleaning additional leverage that might prove useful with Bastion. During a shared meal in the galley, a small compartment with a narrow table and a battered cooking unit, they finally discussed the bigger question. What if Bastion tries to double-cross us? "His reputation is that of a master manipulator," Nira said, pushing aside a half-finished plate of rehydrated protein. "He invests in biotech not just to sell it, but to control it. If he thinks handing us Lenz will be less profitable than turning us over to my father or Halvisa, he'll do it." Rowan leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "So we need a counter-threat, something that makes him see us as more valuable alive than sold out." Nira's gaze sharpened. "Exactly, which is why I've compiled new evidence about Krelwyn's alliances with Halvisa. It shows they're secretly developing a specialized neurotoxin that targets certain genotypes. If Bastion sees that we can prevent or promote this new weapon's exposure, he might prefer to keep us alive and cooperative." A flicker of awe crossed Rowan's face. "That's big. If Halvisa and Krelwyn perfected such a toxin, entire populations would be at risk. You think Bastion wants that technology, or do you think he wants to stop it?" "Hard to say," Nira answered, "but knowledge is power. Bastion would likely prefer to be the one controlling such data rather than letting Krelwyn or Halvisa use it unchallenged." With that plan in place, they spent the next day finalizing the files they would present. In the cockpit, the star charts scrolled as they approached the coordinates Bastion had sent. Eventually, they emerged into a barren system, featuring an enormous asteroid field lit by the pale glow of a dying star. The navigation console pinged a single large metallic structure nestled among drifting rocks, an unregistered station built into a hollowed asteroid, shielded from scanning by thick mineral deposits. Subtle, Rowan muttered, guiding the Eclipse runner carefully through the debris. Nira clenched the arms of her hover stretcher. Let's hope Bastion's in the mood for negotiating. They docked in a pressurized hangar that looked more like a repurposed mining tunnel than a proper bay. A handful of Bastion's attendants, a motley crew of masked individuals in sleek black attire, met them and conducted weapon scans. Rowan tried to protest when they insisted on holding his sidearm, but one attendant calmly pointed a high-powered plasma rifle at him in response. "Cooperation is appreciated," said the attendant in a modulated voice. "Lord Bastion wants you comfortable but not armed." Tension thrummed between Rowan's shoulder blades. He had never felt entirely at ease being disarmed. Yet they complied, and the attendants led them down a narrow corridor lined with metal plates and subdued red lighting. The corridor opened into a hall that was unexpectedly opulent. Soft rugs, ornate sculptures, and gilded pillars that seemed jarringly out of place in the hollowed asteroid walls. On a raised platform beneath a vaulted ceiling sat Lord Bastion. He was a tall figure dressed in a patchwork of richly embroidered robes and sleek, technological harnesses across his chest and arms. Cables trailed from these harnesses to a device reminiscent of a throne, bristling with monitors and interfaces. The faint glow of data screens danced across his pale features, giving him a ghostly aura. "Welcome," Bastion said, his voice resonating with a calm confidence. "Rowan Cade and Nira Krelwyn. Two names I've heard more than once in recent weeks." He gestured to a pair of ornate chairs facing him. "Sit, please." Rowan positioned himself beside Nira's hover stretcher, ignoring the invitation to sit. "We're here for Dr. Lenz. You indicated you might help us find her." A slow smile curled Bastion's lips. "Straight to business, then. Very well. I do indeed have knowledge of Vera Lenz's whereabouts. She and I had a partnership of sorts some years back, but she decided my vision for biotech was too mercenary." He gave a theatrical shrug. "Ironically, she fled to the Outer Rim to conduct her ethical research out of reach of people like me, or your father." His gaze shifted to Nira. "I hear you have a personal motive for finding her, something about restoring mobility to paralyzed legs." Nira lifted her chin, her regal bearing evident despite her physical constraints. "That's right." "Fascinating," Bastion purred, his eyes glittering with curiosity. "But why should I help you, beyond your claim that you carry damning secrets about Krelwyn? If I want to acquire those secrets, I could simply force them from you." Nira didn't miss a beat. "You could try, but we've taken precautions. If anything happens to us, the data gets leaked automatically to every major faction in the sector. You'd lose your chance to control it." A momentary flicker of annoyance crossed Bastion's face, then melted back into a measured smile. "Precautions. Sensible. Then I suppose we'll negotiate. If you want Dr. Lenz's location, I'll require something tangible. Access to whatever data you have that might expand my biotech repertoire or give me leverage over Krelwyn." Rowan weighed in, crossing his arms. "We're prepared to offer you proof of Krelwyn's and Halvisa's neurotoxin program. Once we confirm you can lead us to Lenz, we'll deliver that evidence." Bastion steepled his fingers, cables on his harness swaying. "You drive a hard bargain. Let's see if we can forge an alliance that benefits us all." And so the real negotiations began, with both Rowan and Nira aware that one misstep could end not just their hopes, but their very lives. The negotiations unfolded in a chamber adjacent to Bastion's throne-like seat, a room designed for privacy and loaded with enough surveillance technology to ensure no one attempted treachery. The walls were lined with elaborate displays depicting successful collaborations Bastion had forged in the past. Signed holographic contracts, luminescent data panels, and trophies from major biotech breakthroughs. It was a bragging hall, a testament to Bastion's far-reaching influence. Rowan and Nira sat at one side of a large oval table, while Bastion remained at the head, flanked by two silent attendants. The cables attached to his harness coiled along the floor like living serpents. To Rowan, the entire arrangement felt like sitting across from some dark sorcerer, though Bastion was simply a man with advanced technology. "We have the data you want," Nira began, holding up a slim data shard. "A partial sample, if you will." She glanced at Bastion's watchers. "Before we hand it over, we want something in return, proof that you can actually connect us to Dr. Lenz. Names, coordinates, security passcodes, whatever it takes for us to locate her without a drawn-out hunt." Bastion's serene smile never wavered. "Very direct. I admire that. But let's not forget, trust must be mutual. Show me a taste of what you have, and I'll reciprocate with a glimpse of the location data you seek." Swallowing a flicker of apprehension, Nira inserted the data shard into a console embedded in the table. At once, holographic screens projected an array of chemical schematics, personal correspondences, and shipping records. Evidence of Krellwin's deals with Halvisa to develop a genotype-targeting neurotoxin. The images glowed in the ambient light, casting flickering patterns on the polished table. Bastion leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "Magnificent. If these formulas are accurate, Krellwin and Halvisa have been pursuing a weapon that could selectively attack entire populations with minimal collateral damage." He glanced sidelong at Rowan. "Though monstrous, it's a staggering demonstration of biotech. Think of the potential if controlled." "Or destroyed," Rowan said pointedly. Bastion chuckled. "Yes, or destroyed. Control can manifest in many forms. Sometimes suppression is the greatest power." Turning to one of his attendants, he made a subtle gesture. The attendant placed a black data sphere on the table and activated it, revealing a star chart with a blinking red marker. "Here," Bastion said, tapping the marker. "This is a location in the Nexum Belt, far in the outer rim, where Dr. Lenz was last confirmed to operate. After she parted ways with me, she took refuge among a group of like-minded researchers. They've constructed a hidden facility within the ice rings of a dwarf planet. The environment is treacherous, swirling shards of ice, electromagnetic interference, minimal external docking ports." Nira's pulse quickened as she studied the projection. If that was truly where Lenz resided, it was the first solid lead in her quest for a cure. "We'll need codes or signals to approach without being fired upon by her security," she said. "That," Bastion replied, "is where we deepen our arrangement. I possess a contact, an old colleague of Lenz's, who can vouch for you, but I won't hand over those codes until I have the complete data package on the neurotoxin." Rowan pursed his lips. They had expected this. "We'll hand over the rest once you confirm the codes work. We're not handing you all our leverage at once." "Of course," Bastion said coolly, a hint of amusement in his tone. "Such caution is warranted. Now shall we formalize the terms of this exchange?" While Bastion dictated conditions to a floating recording device, outlining the specifics of their agreement, Rowan couldn't shake the feeling of being in the lion's den. Bastion struck him as someone who reveled in orchestrating grand bargains, weaving a web of mutual dependencies. Nira, however, played her role flawlessly. She demanded additional assurances, safe passage out of Bastion's domain, non-interference if Krellwin's hunters appeared, and immediate revocation of the arrangement if Bastion attempted any betrayal. Bastion nodded along, consenting to each stipulation in that deceptively pleasant tone. Once the formalities concluded, Bastion motioned to his attendants. They handed Nira a small holotablet. "This contains the approach vectors you'll need for Lenz's facility, along with partial passcodes. My colleague, Dr. Shea Mira, will provide the final clearance once you arrive. She resides on a station near the Nexum Belt and has direct channels to Lenz." Nira scanned the data quickly. "We'll verify this. Once we have confirmation that Dr. Mira's credentials are legitimate, we'll transmit the rest of the neurotoxin files." "Splendid," Bastion replied. "A pleasure doing business." He paused, his gaze flicking to Nira's still legs. "I do hope Lenz fulfills your expectations. Her achievements in neural restoration are groundbreaking. If successful, you may well become more than whole. You could become extraordinary." Rowan bristled at the ominous ring in Bastion's voice. "We'll find out soon enough." They departed the negotiation chamber, escorted by Bastion's silent guards. Once back in the corridors leading to the hangar, Rowan let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "I almost expected him to double-cross us right there." Nira nodded. "He might yet, But for now, we're more useful as accomplices. If this leads us to Lens, it's worth the risk. Upon returning to the Eclipse runner, they locked themselves in and ran thorough scans, checking for trackers or sabotage. Fortunately, Bastion's people hadn't tampered with the ship. At least none of the scanning instruments found anything amiss. Rowan powered up the engines and they navigated away from Bastion's asteroid lair, the hull shaking as they re-entered the swirling debris field. Just as they were about to jump into FTL, a priority comm channel lit up on the console. Rowan frowned, patching it through. The face that appeared belonged to Archduke Krelwyn. His emerald scales glittered in the comm's flickering light, and his expression twisted with barely contained outrage. "Nira," he spat, ignoring Rowan entirely. "Did you really believe you could vanish without consequence? That I wouldn't track my own daughter's movements through half the underworld?" Nira's eyes hardened, and Rowan's grip on the flight controls tightened. "I'm not your daughter anymore," she said, her voice steady. "You made that clear the day you gave me away, like a piece of furniture." Krelwyn's laughter was grim. "Don't be melodramatic. You were never capable of fulfilling your role. My only mistake was not disposing of you sooner." A predatory grin split his scaled face. "But it appears you've stumbled into alliances with Bastion and rummaging through my finances, no doubt. Hand over what you've stolen or face the consequences." Rowan cut in, his tone acidic. "Go to hell, Krelwyn. We're done taking orders from you." "I look forward to teaching you otherwise, Mercenary," Krelwyn snarled. "This conversation is over." The transmission died abruptly, leaving an ominous silence. Nira let out a shaky breath. He must have had a spy on Tarnak or among Bastion's network. That means he knows we're chasing Dr. Lenz. Rowan engaged the jump drive. Then we make sure we get there before he does, or anyone else he might have tipped off. Their journey took them deep into uncharted territories of the Outer Rim, where star systems were sparse, and space debris drifted in silent orbits around forgotten suns. Each time they dropped out of FTL to recalculate, Rowan's tension climbed. If Krelwyn had mobilized a pursuit, they might be moments away from intercept. Despite the looming threat, the hours in transit allowed Nira and Rowan to talk more freely. They exchanged life stories in fragmented pieces, Nira recalling the early days before her accident, when she dreamed of traveling the galaxy, Rowan sharing the travails of a mercenary life where trust was rare. A surprising camaraderie formed, fueled by mutual respect and an odd sense of kinship in adversity. Finally, they neared the coordinates for Station Halara, an outpost described in Bastion's data as the meeting point for Dr. Shea Mira, Lenz's colleague. The station orbited a small, frigid planet at the edge of the Nexum belt, its hull constantly battered by ice fragments swirling in the planet's rings. Nira frowned as the Eclipse runner approached the station. Minimal life signs, short-range scans show only a skeleton crew. Bastion said Dr. Mira would be here, but Rowan tensed at the possibilities. Could be a trap, or maybe Mira keeps a low profile. They docked in Halara's nearly vacant hangar without resistance. The only visible security presence was a single automated turret scanning the bay. Once inside, the interior corridors felt eerie, ill-lit, with flickering screens displaying environmental readouts. A hush pervaded the station, broken only by the hum of life support. At a junction leading to what appeared to be a laboratory sector, they found a locked door with a keypad. Nira input the passcode Bastion had provided. The door hissed open, revealing a sterile hallway that branched off to multiple sealed rooms. "Demira," Nira called softly, her voice echoing. "We were sent by Bastion." After a tense moment, a door slid open to reveal a tall figure wearing a fitted lab coat. She had copper-toned skin and a visor-like implant covering her left eye. In her arms, she held a data slate. "Nira Krelwyn, Rowan Cade," she said, confirming their identities with a faint nod. "I'm Dr. Shea Mira. Bastion told me to expect you." Rowan studied her posture, noticing the faint tension in her shoulders. "We came to find Dr. Viera Lenz. We were told you know how to reach her." Mira nodded, stepping aside so they could enter the lab. The space was outfitted with advanced medical equipment, some of which appeared repurposed from military tech. "Your arrival is timely," Mira said, leading them past rows of cryo cabinets. "Lenz's current location is dangerously remote." She set up a hidden facility within a glacial fragment orbiting the dwarf planet Slythe 4. But she doesn't take visitors lightly. I can provide you with an encrypted ID key that should allow a one-time landing clearance, assuming her automated defenses recognize it. Nira inhaled sharply, her voice barely containing her impatience. Thank you. Anything else we need to know? Mira's single eye behind the visor flickered with sympathy as it landed on Nira's motionless legs. Dr. Lenz is our best hope for advanced neural regeneration. But be warned, she's become increasingly cautious. I can't promise she'll treat you if she believes you pose a threat. Nira glanced at Rowan, determination etched on her face. We'll convince her, one way or another. Dr. Mira prepared the ID key, a translucent chip about the size of a fingertip. Embedded within were intricate encryption codes that, she claimed, matched Lenz's secure systems. As she handed it to Nira, her expression grew solemn. There's a reason Lenz hid out here. She discovered that certain factions, including your father, Archduke Krelwyn, would do anything to harness her research. She didn't want her work twisted into weaponry or sold to the highest bidder. Even Bastion's interest alarmed her. Rowan nodded, arms folded. Can't say I blame her. If this tech can heal paralysis, it could also be abused to create super soldiers or mind-controlled drones. Mira tapped her data slate. Exactly. You'll need to reassure her your intentions are purely medical. Otherwise, she might assume the worst and lock down her facility. Nira studied her own reflection in one of the lab's reflective panels. My intentions are personal. I want a chance to walk again, not to build an army. A shadow of empathy passed over Mira's face. Then you might succeed where others failed. They parted ways shortly thereafter, with Mira pressing a final vial into Nira's hand. A metabolic stabilizer. If Lenz does attempt a procedure, your body will need to handle the shock. Inject it prior to arrival. Thank you, Nira murmured. Mira only nodded, then sealed the lab door behind them. Rowan guided Nira back through the station's silent corridors, their steps echoing ominously. The sense of foreboding was thick. Halara Station felt like a ghost outpost, clinging to life in a hostile sector. Once aboard the Eclipse Runner, they wasted no time undocking. Rowan keyed in the dwarfed planet's coordinates and engaged thrusters, weaving carefully through the swirling ice ring that battered Halara's orbit. Moments later, they jumped to a sublight approach towards Slythe 4. The journey took hours, each second spent in watchful anticipation. Rowan expected trouble from Krelwyn or Halvisa or any number of opportunistic hunters. But space was eerily quiet. No suspicious contacts on the scanners. No transmissions demanding they surrender. Eventually, the dwarfed planet loomed ahead, a frozen sphere dotted with jagged ice spires. As they neared the largest ring fragment, the ship's sensors picked up a faint energy signature consistent with an underground facility. Following Mira's instructions, Nira inserted the ID key into the ship's nav console. At once, a coded handshake sequence began, sending encrypted pulses through the planet's crust. For a tense minute, there was no response. Then the console beeped. A landing corridor lit up on the sensor map, showing them a safe path through shifting ice walls. Rowan guided the Eclipse Runner gingerly, the hull trembling under buffeting winds and swirling shards. Finally, they broke through into a cavern that glowed with artificial lights set into the icy walls. At the far end lay a sealed hangar door. That's got to be it, Rowan said, heart pounding. Now we see if Dr. Lenz is willing to let us in. Nira's face was pale but determined. She has to, she whispered, more to herself than to Rowan. This is my chance. The hangar door slid open with a hiss, revealing a modest docking chamber carved directly into the ice. Bluish lights embedded in the ceiling bathed the area in a dim glow. As soon as Rowan set the Eclipse Runner down, the hangar resealed itself, and a layer of pressurized atmosphere enveloped the ship. The engines whined as they cooled, and Rowan glanced at Nira. This is it, he said quietly. Ready? She exhaled, checking her portable injection device. The metabolic stabilizer Mira had given her was loaded. Let's find Dr. Lenz. They descended the ramp into the hangar, the cold biting at their exposed cheeks even through the pressurized environment. The space was small, a single corridor extended from the docking chamber, leading into the unseen depths of the facility. No armed guards stood watch No security drones hovered overhead. A disconcerting silence prevailed. As they approached the corridor, a mellow female voice echoed from hidden speakers. You've used an authorization key from Shay Mira. State your intentions and identities. Rowan exchanged a glance with Nira. I'm Rowan Cade, a mercenary, he said, stepping forward. This is Nira, Archduke Krelwyn's daughter. She seeks your medical expertise, Dr. Lenz. A pause, then the voice resumed, tinged with guarded curiosity. Krelwyn's daughter? Interesting. State your purpose, Miss Krelwyn. Nira cleared her throat, her regal composure fraying slightly under the emotional weight of this moment. I was paralyzed in an accident. My father has deemed me worthless. I've come for help, experimental neural regeneration. I know you can restore mobility to those deemed hopeless. Silence stretched, filled only by the faint hum of hidden systems. Then the corridor lights shifted from white to pale green, and the voice said, Enter. They followed the corridor into what appeared to be a makeshift reception area. A single door hissed open to reveal a lab bristling with advanced biotech apparatus. Rows of containment tubes lined one wall, while the opposite side hosted diagnostic pods that glowed with faint, pulsing readouts. In the center stood Dr. Viera Lenz herself. She was middle-aged, with hair braided close to her scalp, wearing a sleek bodysuit beneath a white coat. Her eyes sparkled with intensity, and a network of tiny scars traced the sides of her temples, evidence of her own neural experiments, perhaps. She inclined her head, studying Nira's legs, then Rowan's guarded stance. So, Bastion sent you, or Mira, rather, doesn't matter. You've come seeking the impossible. Nira squared her shoulders. That's what everyone says until they see your genius in action. Lenz's gaze flicked briefly to the injection device in Nira's hand. Mira gave you a stabilizer? Good. You'll need it if we proceed. She circled around them, scrutinizing every detail. But know this, I'm not simply in the business of fixing people for a price. My work is about redefining human and alien potential. If you want my help, you abide by my terms. Rowan noticed the unwavering conviction in the scientist's eyes. This woman was the key to Nira's future, and possibly to something far bigger than either of them imagined. Your terms? Nira's voice quivered only slightly. The hum of the lab equipment thrummed in the background, an anxious undercurrent to their conversation. Dr. Lenz nodded. I'll assess your body's viability for neural interface integration. If you're a candidate, I'll proceed. But there are risks. Your father isn't the only threat. The procedure can overload the nervous system, causing excruciating pain, or worse, you must consent to everything, fully aware of the dangers. Nira exchanged a glance with Rowan, then she turned back to Lenz, face resolute. I've come this far, whatever the count I accept. Rowan's stomach tightened at the finality of her words. I'll be here, he said quietly. Every step, or lack thereof. Lenz waved a hand toward a diagnostic pod. Place her inside. We'll run preliminary scans. As for you, she gestured at Rowan, I'll need you close. Emotional bonds can significantly influence the success of my procedure, particularly when bridging neural networks. My method taps into empathy as well as raw data. Rowan blinked, caught off guard by the unexpected angle. Empathy? I'm just a mercenary. Lenz's mouth twisted in a wry smile. And yet you're here, defying one of the sector's most ruthless figures to help Krelwyn's daughter walk again. Don't underestimate your role. Carefully, Rowan lifted Nira from her hover stretcher, cradling her legs as she steadied herself with her arms around his shoulders. The contact felt strangely intimate, intensifying the bond they had forged through near-constant adversity. Gently, he placed her into the pod's reclined bed. Lenz attached monitoring nodes to Nira's temples and spine, then keyed commands into a console. Streams of data cascaded across a holographic display. Her brow furrowed. Your spinal damage is extensive. The neural pathways have been dormant long enough that atrophy is severe. However, she continued, the signature suggests it wasn't purely accidental. There's evidence of deliberate nerve scarring. Nira's lips tightened, tears threatening to well up. That means my father arranged it, didn't he? Lenz pressed the back of her hand against Nira's. It appears so. I've seen sabotage of this nature before. Someone carefully severed the nerve clusters. But the good news is that artificially induced damage can sometimes be reversed more consistently than random trauma. My biotech was designed for exactly this kind of tampering. Rowan ground his teeth. He had suspected Krelwyn's involvement, but hearing it confirmed made his blood boil. The Archduke had robbed Nira of her mobility intentionally. "Let's do this," he said, voice steely. Lenz nodded. "I'll start with a nerve conduction primer. It will feel like tingling or electric shocks. Then we'll proceed to the more invasive portion." She looked at Rowan. "I'll need your help keeping her calm, physically and emotionally. It's not just about holding her hand. When the neural link attempts to reconnect, her body may convulse. She'll need an anchor, someone she trusts." Nira cast a glance at Rowan, her face pale but determined. "I do trust you," she whispered. The next hours became a blur of medical procedure and searing intensity. Dr. Lenz initiated a multi-phase neural reconnection process using a specialized interface that pulsed electrical signals into Nira's dormant nerve channels. Each pulse elicited waves of agony that made Nira tremble and cry out. Rowan stayed by her side, gripping her hand as her nails bit into his palm. "Steady," Lenz murmured, adjusting the calibrations. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she watched the readouts. The luminous holograms showed neural pathways flickering to life, forging tenuous connections where none existed. "We're getting some movement. The signals are bridging." Nira's breathing hitched, her chest heaving as tears coursed down her cheeks. "I, I can feel something," she gasped, voice quavering. "My legs, they're burning." "That's the conduction route reestablishing itself," Len said. "Rowan, hold her tighter." Rowan braced himself, pressing his free hand against Nira's shoulder to keep her from thrashing. Her body convulsed as if electricity crackled along her spine. Each convulsion sparked new data on Lenz's screens, waveforms growing stronger, nerve clusters lighting up. Finally, Lenz eased the intensity of the pulses. The lab fell silent except for Nira's ragged breathing and Rowan's pounding heartbeat. Dr. Lenz examined the monitors with cautious optimism. "Preliminary bridging is successful. The next step is an infusion of synthetic nerve filaments. Mira's stabilizer formula will help your body accept them." She retrieved a shimmering vial from a refrigerated unit, then carefully injected it into an IV line connected to Nira's arm. Within seconds, the readouts changed, showing an accelerated formation of nerve-like strands weaving through the damaged spinal region. Nira whimpered, her head tossing against the cushion. "Please, help. It's too much." Rowan stroked her cheek, voice trembling, despite his effort to remain strong. "I'm here," he whispered, leaning in close. "Focus on me." Lenz paused, her gaze lingering on Rowan's protective posture. "Good," she murmured. "Your proximity helps synchronize her emotional response, which stabilizes the neural pattern." In that moment, Rowan understood that this was about far more than physical healing. It was a testament to the bond they'd forged, to believing in each other's potential. He kept whispering reassurances, calling her name, reminding her of why she had come all this way. By the time Lenz concluded the final phase, Nira's entire body shone with sweat. Her breathing was shallow, but the monitors showed stable vitals. Dr. Lenz carefully retracted the electrodes, stepping back with an air of professional satisfaction. "We're finished for now. Her body will need time to recover and integrate the synthetic filaments. Movement may return gradually over the next few days. There could also be side effects." Rowan sighed, relief coursing through him. "Side effects?" Lenz pursed her lips. "Heightened sensory input, potential spasms, possibly emotional fluctuations due to the rewiring. But if her system accepts the modifications fully, she'll be able to walk, and more. My biotech can exceed standard mobility." Nira's eyes fluttered open. She locked onto Rowan's gaze, voice barely audible. "Did it work?" He brushed damp hair from her forehead. "We'll find out soon. Rest now." Across the lab, Dr. Lenz powered down the machinery. Rowan knew they were standing on the brink of transformation. Whether or not Krelwyn lurked on the horizon, for this moment, hope reigned. From the vantage point of someone who has followed this journey from start to finish, the outcome couldn't be more inspiring. What began as a cruel gift evolved into a story of resilience, self-discovery, and newfound hope. Nira, no longer defined by paralysis, proved that determination and trust can lead to unimaginable breakthroughs. Rowan, who once cared only for the next job, uncovered the power of loyalty and genuine connection. Even Dr. Lenz, driven by her ethical passion for healing, found renewed purpose when others believed in her work. In the end, barriers fell, physical, emotional, and societal. The triumph of courage over cruelty reminds us that perceived weakness can be a wellspring of strength. If you enjoyed this tale of unexpected alliances and bold transformations, please like and subscribe to the channel for more stories brimming with wonder and heart. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this epic journey. Share your comments or opinions below so we can continue the discussion together. Thank you for being part of this adventure, and we look forward to creating even more amazing stories with your support.